G'day, welcome to another I'm a Celebrity 2022 Roundup, UK version, because apparently they do this all over the world, but they'll do it in Australia, so technically it's not all over the world, it's all in Australia. Anyway, let's quick look at the last week of I'm a Celebrity, and I'll tell you my least favourite and favourite celebrities who are in the jungle, and what they've been up to as well. Everything, obviously, image-wise, is copyright of ITV and its partners. I have no say on anything that they are doing. However, I will start immediately with my two least favourite campmates. I will go more into it later, but my least favourite campmate at the moment, by far, is Boy George. Now, I'm old enough to remember him when he was a pop star in the 80s, and I'm also old enough to remember interviews with the band. He had an affair or a relationship with John, the drummer of Culture Club, and it all ended acrimoniously and very badly. And like I said last week as well, Boy George is spitting his dummy out about Matt Hancock being in there, but despite everything about Matt Hancock, he's never been in jail for anything, unlike Boy George. So yeah, a bit of a hypocrite in my opinion. The second least favourite person is Charlene White, who basically is not a team player. She ended up having the comfy bed in the RV, but refused to use it and let other people sleep more comfortably on the hammocks, etc, etc, etc. So yeah, there's just something about her I didn't like. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there you go, what can you do? Anyway, I'm not the only person who's not a big fan of some of the celebrities. Now, I mentioned this a while ago, and back in the day when Rishi Sunak first became leader of the Conservative Party, he went to Conservative Party headquarters, which is what you do. He couldn't become Prime Minister then because King Charles, the new king, was out of London, so he had to come in and, he had to come in the following day, which meant that all Rishi could do was to just smile and be polite and ask the people to be nice to him. Sorry, I've just had a message. Oh, that's very nice. There we go. So yeah, it's all very, very peculiar what went on. Anyway, I've lost, now I've had to do that, I've lost where I was. Oh no, I hate it when that happens. I'm back. So, Rishi went to Conservative headquarters and everyone was out there, all the Tory MPs and all the workers and everything, were all like, oh, well done Rishi, well, you know, all that kind of thing, applauding, and Matt Hancock was there as well. And Matt Hancock got completely blanked by Rishi. I mean, completely blanked by him. He shook pretty much everyone else's hand that you can see in the background and all around, but didn't even look at Matt Hancock. So I'm thinking, oh, there's something going on there that's not good. But the good news was, that, well, there isn't any good news for Matt Hancock. He ended up in a jungle. So the first challenge from our last discussion that we had on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here was who wants to look silly on air, which is basically who wants to be a millionaire. It's a play on words. Do you get it? And the public voted, and they voted for Owen and Matt. Now, one problem with that is obviously we're expecting Matt to get voted in because, you know, everyone hates Matt. But Owen, everyone knows Owen is not the brightest spark in the world. So it was possibly a bit cruel that the public actually voted for them two to be the two being questioned. The other celebrities were allowed to go to watch, which was a nice hour or two out for them. Apparently I'm broadcasting live, who knew? And when they got asked a question, they immediately got gunked in God knows what. Now, Matt Hancock said that the brown stuff tasted like some kind of sugary sauce or molasses or something like that. They also got covered in custard, which was nice. And they got what looks like tar, but I think again was the molasses, and then they got feathered, which that made me laugh. To be fair, this series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here has made me laugh quite a bit. They had a question where they had to ask the audience, and the audience all answered D and one answered B, and well, basically they went with D because that's what the audience said, the audience being the other campmates, and they lost 2 stars because they got it wrong. They could also phone a friend, which was basically Sue Cleaver, who had to answer a phone and then get gunk poured on her, and guess what? She got a question wrong as well. So by the end of it all, they only got a handful of stars. I thought I'd written how many stars they got actually, but I haven't. Yeah, they only got a handful of stars and covered in muck and gunk. Mind you, worse was to come because, well, hang on. The worst was to come because there was another challenge later on. Sue was involved again, and this was the colours challenge, I like to call it, which is basically Simon Says. If you're of a certain age, you'll remember Simon Says. It was basically a circular thing with red, yellow, blue and green light on it, and they flashed randomly, and then you had to press the colours, and initially it started off very easy, like red and yellow, and then it was red, yellow, blue, and then eventually it was like and you know, if you got it wrong it went well, this was basically the same thing, but the only problem was whenever they got it wrong, when they said the colours in the wrong order, sometimes they had to do it individually, eventually they had to do it as a group, they just got covered in powder, like they'd been on one of them Hindu, I think it is, Indian celebrations they have, where they just throw all the stuff all over the place, and they were just covered from head to toe. Those Jill Sue and Chris Moyles ended up being covered in it. It was kind of funny, but you're also thinking, ooh, that's powder, that's going to hurt the lungs, isn't it? So they went to the Deals on Wheels, and as far as I remember, I don't think they actually won it. So Sue was very upset because she'd had a morning where she got gunked, and then she got another morning where in the afternoon she got covered in powder for no reason whatsoever. Nah, poo occurs. It was to do with tweeting actually. And then you've got Matt Hancock the following day, and he got stung by a scorpion. Now that doesn't sound good when you get stung by a scorpion. To be fair, I've never been stung by anything, not even a bee or a wasp. But the scorpion was about the size of my thumbnail. It was a tiny little scorpion that was inside a jacket that he picked up. And you might think, of all the people, there's 11 people there in the camp, of all the people to get stung by a scorpion, it's Matt Hancock MP, who shouldn't really be there. He should be serving his constituents. I've said that before. Having said that, he's not as annoying as I thought he was going to be. And then you had... Sorry. I've just seen the next picture. Mike Tyndall. He's got some interesting articles of clothing that he wears when he goes into the pool to have a bath. Use the term loosely. Basically, they are speedos, budgie smugglers, and I don't think they look good on anyone. And you know, Mike Tyndall is beginning to think of himself a bit of a hunk, and I think everyone else thinks he's a hunk as well. Mind you wouldn't argue with him. He's a former World Cup winning rugby player, so yeah, you wouldn't argue with him. But yeah, they had these tiniest little trunks on that you could possibly have. And then he also, whilst he was wearing these, he hid round the corner in the pool as Sean come down to the pool to get into the pool, and he says, "Oh, I was looking for Mike. Have you seen him anywhere?" And I think it was Jill who was in the pool, and she went, No, I've not seen him anywhere." And Mike's just kind of hanging around. She says, "But be careful," she said, I think there's a catfish in here." And he was like, ooh, a bit worried about it. It should be alright. I think it's, hiding over and pointing in the opposite direction to where Mike was. Anyway, Sean gets in, and Mike swims underwater towards Sean, and Sean absolutely bricks it and goes practically screaming out of the pool. When he's interviewed later, they said, what was up with you? And he said, well, she said there was a catfish there, and I saw this shadow under the water coming towards me, and I thought it was a shark. Then we have the next challenge. Now, the next Bush Tucker trial was House of Horrors, and who did the Great British public vote for? That man again. It was Matt Howard, because Matt Hancock, because well, people love to see him squirm. The problem is, he's not really a squirmer. He went into, imagine a doll's house with 4 rooms in it, but imagine it adult size, actual size, and then imagine it full of disgusting stuff. For example, somewhere in the region of 2.5 million flies in a small room, and basically Matt had to find these stars that were hidden in various places within the rooms in order to get some food for the camp, because the camp by this point was starting to get a little bit hungry, has to be said. He also ended up in a room which had snakes in it, and one snake, a white snake, took rather a lot of attention, or made a lot of attention toward Matt Hancock's rear, which is a bit peculiar. To be fair, there was another snake that was going for him. There was a cot and a cradle which had a star in it, and Matt knew it had a star in it because by this point it was the 4th room, so he knew it was going to be in there, but there was a snake literally guarding it like it was something out of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and it was going at him and everything. It was very amusing. One did enjoy that quite a considerable amount. I mean, I do sometimes think that some of the challenges are not very, what's the word, jungly. You know, like being a massive doll's house with a load of animals in it isn't very jungly, because you don't find them in the jungle, but I suppose they have to freshen it up every now and then. My favourite thing, but I couldn't find a picture of it, this is a room that was just full of pigeons. I mean, literally, there were birds everywhere. But my favourite room was one where there was a bath, and the bath was incredibly deep. It wasn't like a normal bath, it was like a 1.5 times deep bath, and it was full to the top of raw liver and lungs and other offal. You could say it was awful. But Matt got that one out, and he did, I'll be honest with you, he did well. I think he got 10 stars, which I don't think is actually too bad. But then, one of my new least favourite people is Sue. She and Mike, more her than Mike, decided that they were going to plot against Matt Hancock as... No, they weren't. Hang on. Rewind. Let's have a rewind. Yeah, Sue and Mike were 2 people. Mike was chosen by the public to be the leader of the camp, along with Matt Hancock, and they had to battle it out, and they both had to choose a deputy, and Mike chose Sue, and they had to do a challenge, and the challenge was a bit weird, really. So we had Matt Hancock being blindfolded, and Mike and Matt were blindfolded, and their deputies had to guide them to and from a button, which when they press the button, it lit up quite a lot of light switches on a board. And what they had to do is they had to go over to these light switches and turn these light switches so that when you press the button, all the light switches were on. So they had to be guided, you know, like row 3, 5 along, all that kind of stuff, and then guided back again to where the button was to check that they pressed the right one. And it went on for quite a while, and you're thinking that you know, Matt Hancock and Sue were going to be really good at this, and they were okay. I won't say they were brilliant, but they were okay. Mike did get lost at one point, which was a little bit frustrating for everyone, and then there's no nice way of putting it, he lost. So Charlene and Matt became the leader, Matt being the leader and Charlene the deputy of the camp, and Matt got to sit on a comfy chair. No one else is allowed to sit on the comfy chair, just Matt, not even Charlene. But they did get to go into the camper van, the RV, and have a comfy bed. However, this is where I start disliking Charlene immensely, although I kind of get her reasons behind it. Charlene said she wasn't going to sleep in the camper van because she liked sleeping in a bed, and then later on, a few days later, after a lot of pressing, she admitted that the reason she didn't want to sleep in the camper van was she didn't want to be sleeping with Matt Hancock, and you're like, it's a game show, no one thinks it's a serious thing, but in the meantime people like Sean were having back problems because they had to sleep in a hammock because there were no bed spare because she wouldn't move into the RV. So Sue and Mike had a little bit of a revolt, and then Boy George, that's him in the 80s, that's him now. I mean, none of us look as good as we did in the 80s, to be fair. But Boy George, who does seem to be coming out as a bit of a nasty piece of work, in my opinion. But again, like I said, I was around in the 80s. I remember interviews in like Smash Hits and stuff like that, where the undertow of the interviews when you're talking to the bands is that Boy George is an absolute dick, and they don't want really to be with him. But, you know, he's the leader of the band, or he's the brains behind the band. He writes the songs, he sings the songs, he plays the theme tune, and all that kind of thing. So they kind of go with it and put up with him. So it's no surprise really that he is a bit of a selfish noob, and to be fair, he says he is as well. He's a Hindu, not wrong with that, but when you start chanting at silly o'clock in the morning, it's not a good thing. So there's the RV, there's Matt Hancock fast asleep, and all on his own. He's basically got a double caravan to himself, because Charlene wouldn't go in there. But never mind, a new day dawned, and this time it was called Deserted Down Under, and the public voted for Matt Hancock again to do the challenge. Now this one was basically you were being buried alive, and then you had to get stuff whilst you were in the coffin. So Matt Hancock, be fair to him, I mean, I'm not, like I've said before, I'm not his biggest fan, but he's certainly, if he wasn't an MP who, I wouldn't say they did things wrong outright, bearing in mind the world had never had a pandemic like this before, no one knew what they were doing, so mistakes were made, and it doesn't matter who was in. Like I've said before, like I say on What a Week That Was, which is a news thing I do every week on a Friday, you can watch it, there's a playlist. The thing is that Matt Hancock never did anything wrong as such. He didn't break the rules apart from having an affair with someone, which is obviously breaking our rule, but he didn't get fined by the police or anything like that. Like I said before, he's never been in prison like Boy George. But if he'd have been just an ex-MP or whatever, I reckon he could win this, which is saying something. I don't want him to win it, but it could be. Anyway, he had to get into this coffin, and then they bucketed, shoveled sand on it. And the amount of sand, there must have been about 4 foot of sand they put on top of it. I mean, it wasn't a wooden coffin, it was a steel lid coffin, so it wasn't going to collapse or anything, but you're still like, you could just put the lid across, you don't have to chuck the sand on, or just chuck a couple of, it doesn't matter who it is in there, but they just kept going with this sand. So Matt's in there, and he has to unscrew stars from the sides of the coffin, and put them in his bag. And out of 11 stars, with everything coming in at him, there were spiders, snakes, rats and everything, he had to put his hand into these portholes, get a key which was inside where all the mice or the rats or the spiders were, the cockroaches, so he had to find them in that, then he had to pull them out with one key, and then he had to find, of 11 padlocks either side of him, the one that would open, get the star and put it in his bag. And then there was other stuff coming in, like I say, you can see there, the snakes around him and all that kind of thing. He did well, he got 6 stars, which I thought was quite impressive, bearing in mind that not only have you got to find the stars initially, find the keys initially, you've then got to find the lock, the padlock that key opens whilst all this is going on around you. So I think overall he did alright on that one. Meanwhile, Owen, the hunk, and was that Scarlett? They went on a Dingo Dollars expedition, and basically they had to count money, but it was like a bureau de change. Basically it was a jungle de change, They had lots of different currencies from all over the world, and they had to get the money out of the safe, and then they count the money, and then they write on the board how much money they had from each country. Now, in the history of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here UK version, every dingo dollar or every trial similar, because obviously they did some in Wales, has been successful, and then they find the person who rings up and asks the question. The other campmates back at camp answer the question, and then if it's a yes or a no, they either get a treat or they don't get a treat. For the first time in the history of I'm a Celebrity UK, the celebrities failed the dingo challenge. There were no phone call made. It was shocking. I was shocked. Mind you, I was more shocked the following day. The challenge, the Bush Tucker trial, was called the Angel of Agony, loosely based on the Angel of the North. And the British public chose not Mac Hancock. They chose Boy George, Chris Miles to win, and Babatunde. So it was a bit of a shock. Bear in mind, the last time the public had voted for Matt, they'd put him in to a coffin. But I think because he kind of coped with it, people got bored of it. So there's the actual angel, and you can see you've got a bottom bit, a middle bit, and a top bit, and that, my finger actually went behind. My finger goes behind. That's weird, isn't it? How I've done that. Look at that. My finger goes behind it. Anyway, sorry, I was just getting a bit confused then. But the three celebrities had to go in. So the bottom celebrity was, I think it was Boy George. He was at the bottom. So he had to get the stars, and he had to pass them up to Babatunde, who was in the middle bit. And I'll be honest with you, Baba was a bit of a waste of space. I'm not saying he was rubbish, but he was rubbish. What he had to do was there's a mesh which is about so big, and he had to put his fingers through, and he had to get up about 6 foot the star, ready for Chris Miles to get it with a magnet, and then Chris Miles had to get it with a magnet round a little mace thing, and then shove it into the wings of the angel, and every star that got into the wings of the angel, they actually won a meal. But Babatunde kept dropping the stars, and the reaction of particularly Dec, of Anton Dec fame, was hilarious. It just kept, every time he dropped one, he kind of went, which I think it just added to it. So poor Chris, he didn't really have much to do. He basically, I think they got 2 stars, something like that. I know they didn't get a lot of stars. It was quite depressing, really. And Babatunde put himself right down, saying, "Oh, they got 3 stars." Saying, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. I've let the team down. I've done really badly. And Boy George and Chris like, no, you're fine and all that. But everyone else is like, yeah, you did. You absolutely let the side down there, mate. And that's not the first time. You remember the first challenge? When they first got there, they didn't get into the jungle, and he had to walk along the plank and hang over the edge. He didn't do that, whereas the 2 girls did that, Charlene and I think it was Jill, managed to do it. So the second thing that they had, the Deals on Wheels, was like a clean-up challenge. They had this cartoon-style house, and stuff was thrown in, and then they had to clean it all up within a certain time in order to get 2 lights on the thing to go all the way to the top. And then they got the dingo dollars. They managed to do it. It started off quite easily with just a few bits and pieces being thrown around, but the last thing they had to tidy up was foam, which I thought was cruel. I thought the setting off the confetti machines was bad enough, but yeah, foam, and they had to. But they managed to do it, and one was quite impressed. They won the prize. They got the question right, and they got jelly babies. Now, Boy George is a vegan, and he ate a jelly baby. Now, it's not been confirmed that the jelly babies were actually vegan. Now, most jelly babies are made out of gelatin, which is boiled bones. That's where you get the elasticity from, which is why a lot of vegans won't eat jelly, a lot of vegetarians won't eat jelly, so jelly babies are a definite no. But people are saying that these jelly babies had beeswax on them. Now, if you're a vegetarian, that's fine. If you're vegan, then they're exploiting the bees to make that. But Boy George jumped on them anyway. I must admit, I find jelly babies myself quite sickly. There was then a protest, which flew over. Now, I mentioned another one, which was a banner behind an aeroplane yesterday when I did my What a Week That Was. Check out the playlist. And this one, though, was COVID bereaved say get out of here. So it's the people have paid someone in Australia, I assume it's the British people, have paid someone in Australia to fly the sign to have a go at Matt Hancock. And you're like, yeah, okay, he didn't handle it particularly well, but you've got to remember that no one had handled anything like this before, and it would have been worse. Jeremy Corbyn had been in there, none of us might be alive now. Jeremy Corbyn had been in power, so, you know, it's a little bit OTT. I appreciate that people died. I lost two people, not family, but two people who I knew quite well, and I managed to get to one of the funerals because it was towards the end. That's where I got silence from, the cat. But it was all distance and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but you know, it was just a very difficult time. But never mind. The following day came, and there was another Bush Tucker trial. So who will the British public select this time? Well, guess what? Obviously, again, they chose Chris Moyles. Yes, Boiling Point. Now, Chris Moyles is a Radio X DJ, does breakfast DJ, and I listen to him when he's on. If I'm driving my car, I don't get up special to listen to him. It's just one of the things where if he's on, he's on. But he comes across as being quite confident, but the people who work with him always say that that's just a persona he puts up when he's on the radio. You know, like acting, like we all do. I mean, working in a shop, you do that. Doesn't matter how bad your day is. You have to be like, oh, are you alright? How's things? And yeah, I'm fine. But he definitely, when he got to the clearing, was incredibly nervous. Now, basically, what he had to do was he had to go into the boiler room. Now, why you'd have a boiler room in Australia in a jungle, I don't know. But anyway, just go with it. So he'd go into the boiler room, then he had to find a set of spanners, all different sizes, but all tied together. And then he had to go through different rooms in order to release the stars off the walls and whatever. Now, to say it didn't go well would be an understatement. For a start, I don't think Chris Moyles has ever used a spanner in his life. It was like my mother, who was 87. Like my mother's 87 trying to use a spanner. It was completely useless. Now I appreciate he's under pressure and he's panicking and all that kind of thing. Then he had to go under water and find more spanners, more stars and whatever. He eventually got two very, very slowly because, like I say, spanner technique was not great. And then he has to crawl up into a room that's not in the water and then down into another room with water. And as he goes down into the second room, he realises that he hasn't got in his bag his spanners or his stars. So he has to go back up again, and he sees them actually between the doorway where he'd come through from one room to another to drop in. Picks them up, puts them back in his bag, but he fails to get another star. So he comes out of the challenge with 2 stars, but then it turns out, whilst he was getting out, he dropped one of the 2 stars, so he ended up with 1 star. So he got 2, but he ended up with 1. And he was bereft. He couldn't believe how badly it had gone. And he was understandably upset and ashamed and embarrassed. But, you know, I thought it was kind of sweet that he took it so badly. But, not to worry, there's always something to cheer people up. And what we had was a fun fair. Except it was a unfair fair. Winners pick a lucky ball. So this was a competition to go and have some surf and turf on a beach, which, bear in mind they're in the jungle, pretty good. You had to complete a challenge in order to choose a ball, and then all the balls were put into a tombola rolly thing, and then one would be picked out randomly, and then that person, of the three people, the three balls picked out randomly, would go to the coast and have a lovely barbecue meal. So the first challenge that they had was, if you've ever been to a fun fair, you'll know the one with the horse and everything, where you have to chuck the balls up, or it might be a camel or even a dolphin, and get it in a hole, and it goes in the hole, and then the thing moves along a little bit. Well, this one was done with water, so they had to stand underneath a water tower. Water would pour out, it would land in the tub on the red, then they'd have to tip the tub into a device that was attached to a water pistol, and then they would have to shoot water at the hole in order to get their horse to move along. And impressively, they all managed to complete it within, I think, 3 fill-ups, which I thought would have took a lot longer, but anyway, it must have been set generously. If it was a real fun fair, nah, it wouldn't have been that good. So they all got various stars. Not all of them chose them for themselves. Then the next lot came in, and they had the old move a ring around a bar that's in different shapes, and don't touch the metal, otherwise the buzzer goes off. But not only does the buzzer go off, but the two people who were watching, because there was 3 people there, two people there with Chris, they got an electric shock. So if you went they got an electric shock. Now Chris did dreadfully on this. I think he managed to complete it, but he got a lot of buzzers, whereas Sue, I think, did it in one go, and I think Baba was with them as well, and he did it quite quickly. Then they had the one that I would have literally vomited on, which was a spinning cup, which had Boy George, Jill, I think Charlene and Owen in it, and it just span round, and the hoops come out of a little slot underneath the big teapot, and then they had to throw the corresponding colour hoop over the porry bit. What's it called? The porry bit? Spout. The spout of their corresponding coloured kettle, whilst it was spinning round, and I would have just vomited on that. Now 3 out of the 4 managed to do it, so the numbers of balls collected were mounting quite well. Then the following day they had the scareground, where 3 people were chosen by the campmates to actually complete a challenge, which was quite complicated, to be fair. Jill was in a lying down, like, you know when you get rescued off a mountain, one of them stretchers strapped into that, but the whole thing span round. In there were all the multicoloured balls. There was also cockroaches, mealworms and all that kind of thing. So that was spinning round. She had to catch the balls, put the balls through the hole, but the balls she had to put them through the hole and time it right, so that the balls actually went down a little ramp thing to Mike. And Mike was on a spinning disc, and he had to pick them up, and then he had to throw them into a pool of water, which is where Owen was. But Owen was channeling, although he'd probably never heard of Duran Duran, he was definitely channeling Duran Duran's Wild Boys video, because he was on a disc that was spinning round and his head kept going underneath the water, so he had to find, whilst he was going round, he had to find the balls that were floating in the water, and then he had to throw them into a bucket. And funnily enough, he managed to throw more of his coloured balls into the bucket than anyone else's coloured balls. A lot of the balls missed. It's a bit strange, I thought. But bear in mind, the more balls you have at the end, the more balls you have inside the tombola thing, so the more chances you've got of winning. There was a loser though, and that was Jill, who had a cockroach crawl into her ear, and it was, I'm not saying it was a massive cockroach, but it was certainly bigger than I was expecting it to be. They did the draw, and Jill thankfully got through after having a cockroach in her ear. I think that was only fair. Matt Hancock got through, and bearing in mind that Owen had 10 balls and Sue had 2 and all the others had like between 4 and 5, Sue actually got chosen as well, and she got then from there forward called 2 Ball Sue, which I think might stick for life, particularly when she gets back to Coronation Street and they do some filming and they call her 2 Ball. But I'm done. So the 3 winners got flown off in a helicopter and they went to the beach, and they had a lovely time. In fact, it almost looked like a romantic meal being had. They basically stuffed themselves silly. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It seemed, well, I would have done as well, to be fair. I would have eaten everything and then probably eaten some more as well. Matt Hancock did get people a little bit wound up by saying that when he got back that he wanted some more food, which wasn't the thing to say. But while they were away, Owen was really, really upset. He had 3 more balls were chosen, and he got chosen along with 2 other players to do a challenge to earn food for the camp, which is basically 8 stars because obviously 3 are not there. So they go to this challenge, and I'll be honest with you, it's probably the easiest challenge I've ever seen. Basically, you had to stick their heads into 3 glass boxes, and then there was a rope in front of them, and along the rope there was like stars, there was like paraphernalia from a beach, so there was like bikini tops and things like that, and they had to just roll them along and get them to the end, which is where Bubba was, and then he would slide it down into the box, and that would be counted as a star. So you think, well, that, you know, what could possibly go wrong with that? Well, they weren't on their own. There were, I can't remember what was in the first one, but I know Owen had snakes, and Baba, well, he freaked out what he had with him. I mean, totally freaked out. They were frogs, or toads. Now, I mean, of all the things they could have put in a glass box where your head is, I don't think frogs or toads are necessarily that bad. But anyway, he absolutely monumentally freaked out. It was completely gone to pieces. But thankfully, everything went according to plan, and they got all 8 stars. So while they were waiting for the meal to come, Owen sat for a long while in the comfy chair because Matt Hancock wasn't there. Matt Hancock was out and about having fun, which is technically breaking the rules. No punishment, as far as I know, has been given to him, but it was like, rules is rules, you know. You're not Boy George. Hypocrite Boy George. See if I threw this together. Got really upset after Scarlett questioned him about his prison time for handcuffing, allegedly, a young man to a radiator, allegedly. And Boy George is saying there was no radiators involved, but there were handcuffs, and you know, tried to laugh it off a little bit, and then comes to the diary room, and as a right go, how dare she say such a thing like this? And he was really upset about it. I'm like, well, hang on a minute, you've been slagging off Matt Hancock, and he's never been to prison, so you know, calm yourself, Boy George. And I mean, already by now I didn't like Boy George, but that just tipped me over the edge. If you go to somewhere like The Jungle, which is reality TV, you are going to be asked questions by people about what you've done in the past, and you can't say, oh well, you can't ask me those. You put yourself in that position by being there. You've took the allegedly £500,000 to be there, which makes me want to think that I want him to stay until the end so he earns his money, but I have a feeling he might get kicked out tonight because a lot of people don't like him. Next challenge, no Matt Hancock, Watery Grave, Charlene and Boy George. So they had to go to the clearing to meet Anton Deck, as you do. That's the wrong one. And they they basically had to stand in these cabinets, and you can see the stars there with the magnet. You had to get the star and you had to put it up the maze all the way to the top and then all the way back down again and then across, and that's what she's doing there. She's reaching across to push it through so Boy George can use his magnet to get it out and then go all around his maze, get the star out of the maze, put it in his bag. Happy days. It started off quite low water there, as you can see. It's not up to the knees, but the water obviously comes in, as do different creatures, and Charlene absolutely, well, clean underwear needed, I think, but that was before it even started. She was panicking. Again, I can understand people don't like tight spaces. I do get that. Boy George doesn't like water, he says. He doesn't like being in areas with water, and this is the second challenge he's had where he's been covered in water. The first one being when he was in the torpedo tube next to Chris Moyles at the very beginning. But Charlene's just screaming and shouting, and she can't cope with it at all, and she ends up being the first person this year to utter the words. Once Boy George got 2 stars. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Which I thought was a bit disappointing. Again, you're there for a reason. And she did the challenge where she went to the edge of a big plank on the top of a multi-storey building. So it all seemed a bit strange that she couldn't cope with the water and a few little animals being put in there. So she come out and she was bereft and really upset. And Boy George is comforting her, saying it's alright, don't worry. They got 2 stars. And then there was another challenge which you can't find a picture of, which is really annoying, where Chris Moyles and I think it was Owen had to sort out potatoes. Little potatoes, big potatoes and sweet potatoes, whilst keeping an eye on, in the distance, these tubes with random fruit and tomatoes and onions and whatever, apples, oranges, going down, and having to count how many oranges and apples they had and how many potatoes they had, all that kind of stuff. But they did it. They actually completed the challenge, and they had an opportunity of winning some chocolate, but the campmates got the question wrong, so no chocolate for the campmates. And then it was the first eviction. Now, the 2 people I particularly want to go are, my main one is Boy George, who's I can't find. Where's he gone? There he is. Boy George, because I just don't like him. I mean, I like his music and whatnot, but nah. And then there is, where's she gone? Charlene, don't like her. She had to go. And Sue Cleaver. They're my 3 least favourites in there, because they just seem vindictive and nasty people. They just come across like that. I'm not saying they are that, but they do come across as that. Anyway, the first person to be evicted last night was Charlene. Result. So Charlene's gone. Now, she's a journalist and she got kicked out before Matt Hancock. So, yeah, there you go then. So that's my roundup of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here for this week. I'll do another one next week because we had some decent feedback from last time. But as I'm talking, the next episode of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is just starting. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, videos you still are, and I will see you all again next time. Until then, bye!